Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. It's great to have you here. My name is Julia Morozova. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Markswebb Research Agency, the organizer of this meetup. Many of you know me from LinkedIn, and I'm happy to finally meet almost face-to-face and see so many familiar names on our guest list. Today, we are excited to present the results of our in-depth research project analyzing the mobile banking experience for expats in the United Arab Emirates. And before we dive in, I'd like to take a moment and warmly thank the MENA FinTech Association for support. First of all, could you please let me know if you can see and hear me clearly? Just drop a plus in the comments so I know that everything is working smoothly. Our meetup will last about 1.5 hours, so you can plan your time accordingly. We're happy to receive any questions. Just type them in the comments below the YouTube video. After we present the research results, we'll answer all of them to make sure that everything is clear. And a quick note. We are recording today's session. If you'd like a copy of the video, feel free to message me on LinkedIn or send me an email afterwards. A copy of the presentation and link to the video will also be sent to all registered participants a couple of hours after our meetup. The main speaker of today's event is Alexey Skobelev, CEO and founder of Markswebb. You may have connected with him on LinkedIn and seen him featured on our company page. Alexey will introduce Markswebb expertise and our approach to researching mobile banking in UAE, and then he'll dive into the research results. We'll cover topics such as the account opening process and onboarding, transparency and interaction with the bank, international transfers, in-app security management, and one more secret area where banks in the United Arab Emirates and MENA region can make meaningful changes and attract and retain expat customers. At the end of our presentation, you'll have a chance to learn how to leverage our research findings and Markswebb expertise to uncover new opportunities and turn challenges into strength. Thanks again for joining, and let's begin.
Hello, everyone. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to speak with you and share the results of our large-scale study of mobile banks in the UAE. I hope that the results of this study will be useful for the entire fintech community of the UAE and other countries in the MENA region, and will help market players better meet the needs of the customers and generally move the country into the technological future. But first things first, for the start, let me say a few words about the company I founded 14 years ago. Markswebb is an international research and consulting agency specializing in user experience and digital service channels. Our team currently has 60 people. We have 3 offices in Russia, Spain, and Armenia. But some employees work from other countries too. We have colleagues who work with us in the USA, UK, and Indonesia. So we are very global. And most of our team are researchers and consultants with extensive experience in the UX of digital services. We carry out about 150 different research and consulting projects every year. And we work with large businesses, banks, large retailers, and telecom operators whose digital services are used by hundreds of thousands and sometimes tens of millions of people, and for whom high-quality customer experience in digital channels is a critical factor in successful business and successful competition in the market. The main thing we do is looking for answers to the question of how to make our clients' digital product more efficient. And for this, we carry out projects that are very different in nature. Sometimes these are UX audits aimed at finding and fixing problems that users may encounter in the process of everyday use of digital service. Sometimes these are comparative studies that are needed to better understand in which parts our client's product lags behind competitors and how to eliminate this gap in the fastest and most effective way. Sometimes this is a search for best practices, trends, and ideas when our client's digital team needs new insights for product strategy and for example, future killer features that will move the client's business forward. As I mentioned, we work with fintech, retail, and other industries, but our main segment in which we have the most projects and the most expertise is banks. We do about 90% of our projects for banks in different countries around the world. And this brings us to the answer to the question, why are we talking about mobile banking today? A couple of years ago, we counted which digital products we have influenced the most during the agency's existence. And it turned out that mobile banking for individuals is a digital product that we have worked with and are working with most often. And we work with very different digital products, with banking website, with internet banks and mobile apps for banks to serve small and large businesses, investment apps, in insurance services, and many others. And so about 30% of all our projects are related to mobile banking for individuals. That is about from 40 to 50 projects per year. And over the course of our work, we have helped develop and grow more than 100 mobile banks in different countries around the world, including services with millions of users, such as mobile apps of Alpha Bank and VTB in Russia with monthly active audience of more than 12 million people each, Jusan and Bereke Bank apps in Kazakhstan, Sense Super App in Ukraine, Beer Bank in Azerbaijan with more than 1 million users each, and many others. We have done various studies around the world, and the UAE is already the 25th country in which we are conducting a study of the quality of customer experience in mobile banking. In general, we have quite a lot of experience in this, and we consider ourselves experts in issues of how to make the best customer experience in mobile banking and how to develop a bank's retail business in digital channels. I believe that the key to successful development of digital products, especially in banking, lies in the active reuse of global experience in healthy competition and in active interaction with end users in order to take into account their needs and to develop services with the goal of making the client's life better. And therefore, by launching the Mobile Banking Review UAE 2024 study, on the one hand, we want to form a complete and comprehensive understanding in the region's fintech community of what a digital banking service should look like, what should be an ideal image of the mobile banking in the future. And on the other hand, we want to bring the experience of other countries to the market because we see how effective it is when new solutions are not invented from scratch, but are reused and created, taking into account the experience of other teams that have gone through the same challenges before. What we literally did in our study, we combined 3 large sources of data and insights. First, we conducted a series of interviews with end users. We made a high-quality sample of expats, different people who live and work in the UAE, but who came from different countries with different income levels, different professional levels, and different experiences with digital banking services, like from novice hotel manager from South Africa and a freelancer from Sudan to a highly qualified IT director from Russia and CFO with many years of experience from France. And we discussed with them their customer journey in banks in the Emirates, what situations they encountered, what they consider valuable, what needs and expectations they have, where they experience pain, and would like a better experience. This is not a quantitative study where we can count some shares and metrics, but we were able to get real stories that allowed us to better understand what mobile banking in the UAE looks like through the eyes of real people. Secondly, we conducted a detailed study of the functionality, interfaces, and customer journeys in 11 mobile banks in the region. We selected the local banking apps with the largest number of installations, and using the mystery shopper method, we completed all the main user tasks in each selected mobile bank, from applying for an account for a new client to receiving a certificate of the current account balance. And we analyzed these scenarios to understand how these scenarios meet the needs of expats and to compare mobile banks with each other. And third, we brought our global experience in mobile banking to the study, brought our own unique system of assessing the quality of customer experience in mobile banking apps, which includes more than 1,000 evaluation criteria. And also we brought our database of references and best practices for implementing individual user tasks in mobile banks around the world. And this allowed us not only to evaluate the UAE mobile banks within the country's border, but also to compare them with global trends in the development of digital banking. The key artifact that we got as a result of the study is a set of gaps, both between needs of the audience and the actual supply, and between the capabilities of different mobile banks. We set ourselves the task of making the study as practical as possible, and therefore the result of our study is not just abstract trends that are unclear how to apply, but very specific insights about the possibilities of making your service better, which can be immediately put into the backlog. Actually, we do not recommend doing this right away. Of course, each insight we propose to use and each gap that we propose to eliminate requires careful assessment by your team for its economic usefulness. But the result of the study will save hundreds of hours of your UX specialists, researchers, product owners, designers, and digital customer service specialists. So I'm sure that you will definitely benefit a lot from using the results of the Mobile Banking Review UAE 2024 study. Okay, we are done with the introduction, and let's get to the actual findings of the study. It makes sense to view the situation with the mobile banking, specifically in the Emirates, through a global context. And the global context is that mobile banking for private clients is the dominant digital product in the finance category. If you look at the top 10 most actively used mobile applications in the finance category, on average, 8 out of 10 will be mobile banks for private individuals. And this will not be like fancy neobanks. This will be mobile apps of classic large banks. There are exceptions, of course, the USA, for example, but in general, the picture is like this. And this is also interesting because from the public point of view, we often hear and see some cool new fintech startups, but the reality is that mobile banks still have the main influence on the audience, on the population. They have more users, they have more resources and more opportunities for development, and they earn more and can experiment more also. This, however, applies more to the so-called Western world, Europe, North America, and some other countries like Australia. In Asia and Africa, the situation is somewhat different, since a very large percentage of the population is not covered by banking services and often doesn't have smartphones and other digital devices. In such countries, we often see digital wallet applications and digital payment services among the most used services. The Emirates are now somewhere at the junction between the Western world and South Asia and Africa, and have features of both regions. In the top 10 most frequently used applications in the finance category, there are only 4 mobile banks. And from this perspective, banks in the country experience quite strong competition, not only among themselves, but also with large fintechs and big techs of the region, such as PhonePe, TapTap, and others. And of course, the present and future of mobile banking in the country will greatly depend on how this competition will develop. Will local banks be able to develop their digital services quickly enough not to lose their audience? This is the question, and this is the challenge. Another aspect of the context in which it makes sense to evaluate mobile banking in the UAE is that almost 90% of the country's residents are expats. And that is why, by the way, in our study, we focus primarily on expats in the Emirates. These are people who came from other countries. They are very different in terms of different languages, cultures, even ways of thinking. And what is more important, different in terms of their banking experience and especially the use of digital banking. For example, we talked to one woman who came to the Emirates from Germany, and Germany is special in that many Germans prefer not mobile apps on smartphone, but online banking through a web browser on their laptop or desktop computer. And when she came to the Emirates, it was a major change for her daily habits that now she needs to do banking only in the mobile app. And this is a completely different experience, a smaller screen, information is organized differently, a different way of interacting with the service. A large number of people with very different experiences in digital banking, with their own specific expectations and their own established patterns of using digital services, is a very serious challenge for UAE banks. Good news for banks in the Emirates. Many expats tell that after moving to the Emirates, their experience of using digital banking in general has improved compared to what they had in their home countries. So mobile banking in the Emirates is generally evaluated by expats themselves as more advanced and convenient than in the countries from which they moved. Also, at the same time, such people mention a large number of completely different problems that we will discuss further. The exception here are the most professional expats from the IT industry, from consulting, from finance, who have been living and working in various developed countries, for whom the Emirates is just another country in which they found themselves in their career track. And such people, of course, prefer the most advanced digital services. They have experience using various neobanks. And for such people, the experience of using mobile banking in the Emirates is perceived on average as a downgrade compared to their past experience. If we now make a quick summary of all the insights that we collected during the study, in the Emirates, mobile banks, many things are done at a high world level. I will also talk about this a little bit later, but if we focus on the main gaps, where the current implementation doesn't meet the needs and expectations of customers, then we can identify 5 key areas for improvement. First, it is a convenience of the process of opening an account for a new client and the first entry to the mobile bank as a new client. Second, it is the general transparency of the bank in relation to its clients. For example, in terms of if it is possible for clients to understand how much they will pay for a particular bank service when using a mobile application. Third, International transfers, here, mobile banks are quite worse if compared to other services. Fourth, this is managing the security of your accounts and cards through a mobile app. Here, we do not evaluate the security of mobile banks itself, but we look at how the clients themselves evaluated and what opportunities mobile banks offer so that clients can feel more secure. And the fifth secret point, which I will not reveal now in order to maintain your interest until the end of the event, we'll talk about it later. And now let's dive into each of these areas in detail and about the process of opening an account for a new client. The first thing that is important to mention is that all 11 mobile banks that we examined allow their new clients to submit an application for opening an account online. And this is a great achievement for the country as a whole, that this is possible from the point of view of the law and infrastructure. It is possible to remotely identify a client and digitally sign an agreement with him to open an account, and that all the main banks of the country have already implemented this opportunity. This is a normal must-have feature in mobile bank in the Emirates. If you compare with other countries, you will not often find that in most banks, especially for expats, they can open accounts completely online. But then the differences between the mobile banks of the Emirates and various inconveniences for users begin. First, only 4 banks out of 11 open an account for a new client instantly or almost instantly after an application through a mobile app. For some banks, this process is delayed and can take several days, and that already reduces conversion, right? During the waiting times, the client may have time to open an account in another bank and start using it, and you can just lose your client. The second big thing to mention here is that there is no consensus in the market on what the account application process should look like relative to the app registration. The mobile banks we observed in the Emirates currently have 3 different implementations in terms of how these 2 actions are linked, the account application and the app registration. The first group, which includes the VIO and Al Maria Community Bank apps, implements these 2 actions as a single process within which everything happens together without any interruptions. Customer identification, KYC, product selection, and device registration all together in one single process. And at the end of this seamless process, the customer finds himself inside the app, logged in, and with an open account that he can use. Yes. The second group here, the Al Hilal Bank and Commercial Bank of Dubai apps has the account application and the app registration as 2 different independent processes. At first, the user registers in the app, and then the account application process starts. And the third group here are the rest of the banks that we studied: ADCB, ADIB, DIB, they live up from ANBD, First Abu Dhabi Bank, Mashreq, and Rak Bank. Here, as in the second group, the processes of submitting an application for opening an account and registering in the application are separated, but their order is different. The client first submits an application through the app, and then after the application is approved and the person actually becomes a client, he registers in the mobile app as an existing client of the bank. And why is it important to discuss these different implementations? We believe that of the 3 options for how the process of opening an account for a new client might look, the first option is preferable and actually the most efficient, because the second and third options have 2 key disadvantages that reduce the conversion of the process and reduce customer satisfaction. The first disadvantage when this process is divided into several independent parts is that in many cases, the client is required to provide the same data several times. Here is an example of how the process of opening an account and registering in a mobile app looks schematically in First Abu Dhabi Bank. The first thing you can notice is that the process is quite long. There are a lot of steps. Each separate block. This scheme here is a separate screen that user goes through, and on each screen he can perform several different actions. So there are quite a lot of actions that are required from the client. And the process is divided into two parts. First, an application for opening an account, and then a registration in the application begins. And here you can see that in both parts of the process, the client must pass through identification. The client first scans his Emirates ID during the application for opening an account and takes a video selfie, and then, still remaining in the same app on the same device, must again go through the process of scanning his Emirates ID and again take a video selfie. And why this is not very good? Firstly, many people don't like being forced to do the same thing over and over for no reason. It's frustrating, and you are already starting to make a bad impression on the client from the very first interaction with him. Secondly, such repetition of actions increases the general duration of the process by 15% or even more. And usually, the longer the process you want to take your client through, the more likely it is that something will distract the client during the process. I don't know, someone will call him, a notification will come from Instagram or a messenger, and boom, the client has already left the process. And it's not a fact that he will return later. So normally, you need to aim to reduce the duration and complexity of the account opening and onboarding process for a new client. And the simplest and the most obvious way to do this is to eliminate repetitive actions. And to do this, you need to combine the application and registration processes. The second disadvantage of a split process, and this is more relevant to the second group of mobile banks that I showed, where there is a separate registration first and then a separate application process for opening an account, is that if the process is split, then after successful registration in the mobile app, you leave your potential client in a state of freedom of choice. And here is an example of the registration process and the account opening process in Al Hilal. In fact, this is only part of the whole process, just registration and the first step of opening an account when the client chooses a product. And the special thing here is that after registration, you give the client a lot of freedom. He can just walk around the app to see what is there, choose products, read something, leave the app if he cannot make a decision right now. He is not required to continue the process right now. And this is bad from a conversion point of view. First of all, your not yet clients will use this opportunity to drop out of the process and then not return. Usually, you need to grab your future client by the shoulders and not let go until he finishes the process and opens an account. We need to make sure that the client doesn't have to think too much or make any complicated decisions. We need the process to clearly direct them to next step as quickly as possible. And that's why most mobile banks now have this room for improvement to make the process of opening an account and registering in the application unified and much shorter. Another thing we have found is that many expats who have just arrived in the Emirates, even if they are very focused on digital banking, prefer to open an account at a bank branch or with the help of a Leave bank representative, because at this point, there is still too much that is unclear and unknown to them, and they need Leave support and advice during the account opening process. And most mobile banks in the Emirates position the account opening process through the app as a self-service. And in some cases, that becomes a barrier for newly arrived expats. Here, I would like to show two examples. This is the implementation of Al Hilal, where during the account opening process, the client has access to customer support via an internal chat and can consult or solve any problems that may arise during the process. And another implementation is the Leave app, in which at the first step of opening an account, they provide contacts of customer support in WhatsApp, where it is suggested to contact if any difficulties arise during the account opening. The problem with this particular implementation is that the message itself is not very noticeable and can be easily missed. And most importantly, in reality, when a problem arises during the account opening process, you will not be able to return to the screen with customer support contact details. But it is still better than nothing. Most mobile banks in the Emirates do not offer any customer support options at all during the account opening process, assuming that customers must somehow go through this on their own. Another major disadvantage of the account opening process in UAE mobile banks is the lack of transparency of terms and conditions. The lack of transparency in the relationship of UAE banks with their clients is a separate large area of improvement. I will talk about it a little later, but here are some specific examples of non-transparency in relation to the account opening process. 9 out of 11 mobile banks do not show any information about the requirements for the new client at all. So a new client cannot clearly understand whether he, with his characteristics, is suitable for opening an account in this particular bank before starting the account opening process. Here are two examples of Leave and Dubai Islamic Bank apps when there is at least some mention of the requirements at the start of the process. In other mobile banks, information is completely absent, or the client receives it somewhere in the middle of the process when he has already spent time and will already be disappointed to learn that he doesn't meet the bank's criteria and wasted time. Another example of non-transparency is the lack of information about the documents required to open an account. 5 out of 11 mobile banks do not show this information before the account opening process begins. And many clients starting the account opening process may find themselves in the middle of the process faced with the fact that they do not have the necessary document and the process will have to be canceled, with the client disappointed by the lost time. And here is an example of the Markswebb app, how in general it is possible to show before the start of the process what documents are required. And this will definitely reduce the likelihood of any misunderstanding for the clients. And the last example of lack of transparency in the process of opening an account, 6 out of 11 banks do not explain what the account opening process will look like, how long it will take, for example, whether the account will be opened immediately or will need to wait for some time. So the clients are not able to form the correct expectation of what will happen next. For many clients, this is uncomfortable. This doesn't allow them to plan their actions, to choose a convenient time to submit an application and so on. And here I want to show another example from the Leave app, when the client is informed at the start of the process that the account opening will be instant, but in reality, after filling out the application form, the client received another message that it will take 2 business days to process the application for opening an account. And this can be even more frustrating for the client than the lack of information at the start. In general, the recommendation here regarding the account opening process is to make it unified. Do not separate the application and registration into separate processes. Reduce the number of steps as much as possible. Give the client the opportunity to consult with the bank representative during the application process, and provide more information about the requirements for the client and what the process will look like before the client starts opening the account. Okay, moving on. The second major area for improvement, and at the same time the area where clients experience problems when using mobile banks in the UAE, is the overall lack of transparency. We just touched on this in terms of the account opening process, but the lack of transparency is even worse in terms of the cost of service and various conditions for bank products. A few short examples of how this lack of transparency can show up based on the stories of real expats with whom we spoke. One of the expats from Spain said that she doesn't understand how much is the maintenance fee for a credit card, and she can't see this information in the mobile banking interface, and can only find this information in previous statements that she previously received by email, which of course is very long and inconvenient journey. Another expat from South Africa told a story about a bank that initially stated that there was no monthly fee for account maintenance when he opened an account. And at some point, bank began to charge him 25 dirhams per month, but the client was not notified in advance that the terms of service would change. So the client was very disappointed because he felt that he had been treated unfairly. And another expat from Russia had a credit card in one of the banks, but couldn't figure out how bonus points for using the card were calculated and awarded. And he decided to simply issue a card in another bank where everything was much more clear. So the lack of transparency of conditions in some cases is not just an inconvenience for users and dissatisfaction, but also a direct loss of the client. 8 out of 11 banks that we studied do not allow customers to find out tariff details, account servicing terms, cost, and other fees through their app. There are only 3 mobile banks where this information is available, which is good on the one hand, but on the other hand, these 3 implementations are also examples of the problems that customers face. The first example here is the implementation in the Al Hilal app. Al Hilal customers can open information with tariffs as a PDF file through the app, but this file is not adapted for viewing on a smartphone screen. It contains a lot of information in tables with small text. The customer will have to constantly zoom in on the document and spend a lot of time to find and read the necessary information. The second example is the Leave app. Here you can open tariffs inside the app in convenient form, adapted for viewing on a smartphone, but the information itself contains some parts that are irrelevant to this particular customer. Here, for example, the customer specifically sees a condition about the absence of a fee for account maintenance if he is a student under 23 years old, but the bank has information about the age of this client and still shows him this irrelevant information. And the third example is the Vio app. Here the problem for the client is that the tariff screen itself is very difficult to find inside the app. Vio positions itself as a digital service and calls tariffs a subscription, and information about the subscription is available in the settings section of the app. And ordinary client normally does not think of tariffs on his account and card as a subscription, and especially doesn't consider them as settings. So it will be very difficult for the client to find this information. Another example of non-transparency is the inability of the client to know the actual amount of the transfer fee before making a transfer. On the one hand, this is a good result. 8 out of 11 mobile banks do show the transfer fee before making a transfer. On the other hand, there are still problems with access to information about the fee at a specific moment when the client needs it. I will give an example of a mobile app of First Abu Dhabi Bank. Here, the client fills out the transfer form, indicating the transfer amount. Then he selects the option to pay the commission fee at his own expense, at the expense of the recipient, or divided between the sender and the recipient. At the same time, when choosing one of these options, he doesn't see what amount of fee are we talking about. Then he enters his passcode, and only after that he sees a summary of the transfer conditions, including the transfer fee. And here, one of our respondents told us an interesting story when he needed to transfer the entire amount that was on his account to another bank. He indicated this total amount in the transfer form. And at the stage of entering the passcode, he received an error message that there was not enough money on the account for this transfer. At this point, the client doesn't see that a fee will be charged for the transfer and doesn't see its amount, and must blindly select the transfer amount so that together with the fee, it would fall within the total limit of money that he has in his account. So the problem of transparency of fees is not only that they are often not displayed in the app at all, but also that sometimes they are displayed at the wrong time and in the wrong place. And this leads to unnecessary odd actions by the client, leads to misunderstanding and finally frustration. I want to show you some examples of mobile banks from other countries that illustrate what kind of implementations there are, so that clients have all the information they need accessible and understandable to feel comfortable. The first example here is the British neobank Moniz and how its app has a tariff section. Firstly, it is easily accessible. From the burger menu, there is a link My Plan, which opens in a section with information on different fees and limits. Secondly, this section shows information specifically for this client. And as a result, the section itself is quite short, and it is easy to find the information you need. And thirdly, this is not just static information. It works as a dashboard. And for example, if a client has a limit on cash withdrawals, in this case, it is £100 per month, the client will be able to see the actual balance of this limit right here. There is no need to calculate it yourself. The second example is the application of app of the Russian OTP bank. And here is an example of how the commission for an international transfer is displayed. The international transfer form itself, by the way, is not a good example here. It's quite complicated and contains a number of UX problems, but the way the fee display works is a good example. The fee is displayed immediately after entering the transfer amount, and the client immediately sees on the same screen how much will be charged from his account in total, including the fee, and can quickly change the transfer amount if he needs to adjust it to some specific amount. The third example is the app of the Spanish BBVA bank. And this is an example of the fact that transparency is not only about tariffs and fees, but also about many other things. In particular, here is an example about the peculiarity of the credit card. In the application form for issuing a credit card, the client can choose one or two options for the date of charging interest on the funds used. And the bank at this moment, when the client chooses the option for the date of charging, gives the opportunity to better understand the differences and shows a fairly detailed comparison table, which allows customer to make a more informed choice. And the last example here is the British bank NatWest. And here again, even in such a simple function as a temporary blocking of the card, there is a room for more transparency. In NatWest, a client blocks a card and is given such a detailed explanation of what exactly will be blocked, which specific transactions will not go through if the card is blocked, and which ones will still go through. And this is very important so that the client doesn't have false expectations. Okay, moving on. And the third area for mobile banking improvement in the UAE, which I already mentioned, is international transfers. One of the main insights we found is that many expats avoid banking services for international transfers and prefer non-banking services like TapTap or Al Ansari, and believe that banks have too high transfer fees and too unfavorable exchange rates. I think that in many cases, this opinion is also related to the lack of transparency that I mentioned earlier. When a client doesn't see a clear, transparent calculation of all fees and conversion rates, he will tend to think that he is being charged too much, right? At the same time, those expats who still prefer banks for making international transfers think that the transfer forms themselves are too complicated, archaic, and take a lot of time to fill out. Well, from our point of view, our research of international transfer implementations in UAE mobile banks, we see that in general, the forms for international transfers are very similar to what they are in banks around the world, approximately the same set of fields, but there are several common UX problems. The correction of them could make mobile banks a more convenient and preferable means for such transfers. The first problem, and here is an example of the implementation of the Leave app, the need to fill in the recipient's address, which is not always known to the sender in advance. And in addition to the recipient's country, here you need to fill in as many as 4 separate fields without any auto substitutions. This makes the process long and is generally inconvenient for the client. And if you can simplify these fields, for example, make a single field for the address with automatic suggestions, similar to those that appear in Google, for example, as you type a search request, this will significantly speed up and simplify the entire customer journey of transferring money to another country. The second problem is an example of the implementation of the transfer form in the Iraq Bank app. Here we see that after entering the transfer amount, and it is in Pakistani rupees, a block appears for calculating the fees, transfer limits, and the transfer amount in dirhams. The block itself is very difficult to perceive. 6 lines with different parameters with small text. It is difficult to quickly find the main thing that worries the client. And as a result, such a form is also perceived as complicated and inconvenient. And the third example is the Abu Dhabi Islamic Bank app. Here, one of the inconveniences mentioned by expats appears, the cooling off period. If the client sends a transfer to a new recipient, then the transfer process is actually interrupted. The customer needs to wait several hours for the bank to approve the recipient, and only after that directly make the transfer to this recipient. It is also inconvenience. I'll give a small example of the English bank Starlink and how it implements information about conversion and transfer fees. Firstly, the form itself displays only the main parameters, and they are clearly highlighted. This is the amount in the debit currency and the automatically calculated amount in the sending currency. This is the conversion rate and separately the transfer fee. And then if the client needs details, he can go to a separate screen which shows the algorithm, the formula for calculating the amount in the sending currency. And also on a separate screen, the client can choose one of two options for sending and transfer with different fees. And what is important, compare them with each other. And this makes the transfer conditions more transparent on the one hand, and on the other hand, all the additional details are hidden by default and do not interfere, do not distract the client from the transfer. If, for example, these are familiar conditions for him and he doesn't need additional information. Okay, moving on, the fourth major area of mobile banking improvement in the UAE is security, or more direct, the capabilities of bank apps to manage the security of the client's money and reduce the client's anxiety. What we saw during the study is that the expat audience is very clearly divided into two groups, one of which believes that mobile banking and other digital bank services are quite safe and they don't need to worry about anything. And the other quite large part of expats is very concerned about security. Normally, these are people who have either encountered fraud themselves or heard or know some real stories about when other people lost their funds due to fraudsters. Such people usually try to protect themselves in addition to the means offered by the banks by default. One of such means is to use the temporary card blocking function as an additional factor in confirming transactions. And this looks quite strange, but several people mentioned that this method at once, when the client keeps the card blocked by default, and when he's going to pay for something with the card, he goes to the mobile bank, unblocks the card, then makes a payment with the card, and then blocks the card again through the mobile bank. In general, this is rather inconvenient. The client performs many actions in order to make a separate payment. And in general, the card blocking function is not designed for such use. Well, there are many different solutions on how to add security to the client without forcing him to do such strange things. Here, I would suggest paying attention to the solutions that I personally recently observed in the work of BBVA Bank in Spain. When you pay for a purchase with a bank card, you as a client receive a notification in the bank's app about the need to confirm this transaction. The client then logs into the mobile bank, sees which merchant is requesting a payment and for what amount. The client confirms this payment in the mobile bank, and after which the bank allows this amount to be charged. And in this particular case, it is more of an online purchase. Also, in reality, it happened in a cafe, but the payment was made through a web interface. But this can also work for offline purchases and other transactions, such as cash withdrawals, for example. The effect is the same as when the client blocks and unblocks the card, but the number of actions on the part of the client is much smaller. And in general, this process is much more convenient. There are many other solutions, but the main thing is to understand that clients have this pattern of behavior and offer the client a more convenient way to meet this need. Another aspect that some expats are concerned about is the lack of additional confirmation factors for unusual transactions. When, for example, you make an international transfer to a new recipient for 20,000 euros, and to confirm this transfer, you receive the same one-time password as for a regular local transfer for 100 dirhams. In such cases, clients become additionally anxious because they understand that they are very poorly protected from fraud with the risk of losing large sums of money. And here we recommend focusing on the practice which is already a standard in many countries, when all client transactions are automatically categorized by risk level, and depending on the risk level, a different confirmation method is offered to a client. For simple risk-free transactions, for example, when a client transfers money between his own accounts or makes some regular payment for a small amount, for such transactions, you may not have special confirmation factors at all. Just tap the send button and that's it. Because even if the transaction is made by mistake or by a fraudster, this doesn't cause the risk of losing money for the client. But if the transaction is categorized as a high risk, for example, when an abnormally large amount is sent to a new recipient, then the transaction may require the confirmation require two confirmations factors at once. For example, a standard OTP from SMS message and an additional factor in the form of, for example, video selfie or answers to some security questions. Such a solution would greatly simplify the execution of risk-free transactions and, on the other hand, increase the level of customer security. And the last thing I would like to say regarding security, the means that ensure the security of a mobile bank, first of all, the authentication method should not be inconvenient, right? Currently, 9 out of 11 banks do not offer customers the function to set a short code to enter the app, and 5 out of 11 do not offer the function to authenticate by biometrics, by fingerprint or by face scan. So most mobile banks use authentication methods in the form of login and complex password that are intended for more browser services. On smartphones, in native apps, this is very inconvenient and, of course, doesn't add security compared to more simple authentication means that are tied to a specific device. And another problem that is at the intersection of security and convenience, which we have heard about several times from real users and observed during the examination of mobile banks, is the inability to see the balance updates on account and the transaction history on the account and card in real time. When you, for example, pay for something and then see that balance of your account hasn't changed, so when a customer is unable to monitor their transactions and account balances in real time via mobile banking, it is automatically perceived by the customer as an unsafe environment. And this is one of the key areas that requires improvement in UAE mobile banking. And finally, the fifth area for improvement, which I left for last, but which in my personal opinion is the most problematic for expats, is customer support. Of all the expats we talked to, only probably 1 or 2 people spoke more or less positively about the experience of contacting customer support at banks. For the vast majority of expats, customer support at banks is an absolute pain point. People hate long waits, people hate bots that you have to pass through to talk to a live bank representative who can help them. People hate the unpleasant attitudes that banks often show towards them. I do not plan to say much here. Customer support is a separate large area that definitely requires improvement. What definitely needs to be said in the context of customer support is that people often say that they would prefer to use the in-app chat to contact customer support. But in reality, when they have some issue that needs to be solved, they will call support by phone. And this happens for 2 reasons. First, of course, half of the mobile banks that we studied do not have an in-app chat or an alternative in the form of a chat with customer support and messengers like WhatsApp. And second, even if the bank's mobile application has a chat, customers often prefer a telephone call because it seems to them that they can more quickly contact a lead bank representative, can explain their problem more quickly, and can get a solution faster. So now in the perception of a bank client, chat is too slow way to get support, and banks in the UAE definitely should work on this perception. From our experience with chats in mobile banks, real improvement in customer experience occurs when banks focus more on changes in internal customer support processes rather than on some external improvements in the chat as an interface. And we have deduced for ourselves several rules that you definitely need to implement if you want to increase the level of happiness of your customers. First, the department responsible for processing customer requests in the chat should have a success metric related to customer satisfaction after processing their requests, and not to the speed of closing tickets. This is a typical mistake when the customer support team is motivated by the speed of closing tickets and not by a high customer satisfaction rating. Second, chat in the bank's app should be positioned as the main support channel and should work in accordance with this positioning. It should really work 24/7, and it should be faster and more convenient than a telephone support. And third, it is important to constantly monitor customer requests, highlight the most frequent one, and automate them. But at the same time, fourth point, always leave a simple opportunity for the client to get to a leave specialist, leave representative. It's very crucial. Okay, despite the fact that the main value of digital customer support is in properly built business processes and automation, there are a number of features on the user side that also help to increase customer satisfaction. And for now, a few examples that may be useful for you. The first example is from the Russian T-Bank, former Tinkoff Bank, one of the largest digital banks in the world. This is the implementation of widgets built into the chat. Here are screenshots in Russian. I will explain what is happening here. The client indicates to the chatbot his need. In this case, to dispute and decline a transaction made by his card. In this case, the chatbot adds a widget directly to the feed with the client, and the launch of this widget opens a separate window for creating a request. This is the second screenshot. In this request, the client uploads the necessary documents, and after that, a ticket is opened. The third screenshot is a message about creating ticket. And the client can also track ticket through the chat. The special thing here is that some client requests cannot be processed in real time. And here the task will be firstly to redirect the client to the functionality of the certain request. And secondly, to help the client make right expectations for the timing. And in such cases, embedding widgets in the chat helps to expand its functionality and process more complex client requests. The second example is from the Ukrainian private bank app. Here in the Private 24 app, in addition to the built-in chat and the standard links to customer support and messengers, a call from the application is offered. So a physical call, but which is not made through the smartphone SIM card, but through the internet. In this case, firstly, the client, if he calls to a customer support through this feature, remains identified for the customer support service. And secondly, such calls are possible and available regardless of the SIM card. For example, if the client is in another country and the roaming is unavailable for him or too expensive, it is still possible to call to customer support with convenience. And the third example is Ma Banque app of the French bank Crédit Agricole. Here, the client has the opportunity to order a call from the customer support service at a convenient time. In fact, this looks like a request for a consultation. The client specifies the topic of the consultation, chooses the time, and confirms the request. And this feature allows you to save waiting time. The client doesn't hang on the call waiting for an answer, but simply agrees that they will be called back later, but at a time chosen by them. For many clients, such an implementation will be preferable if they understand that a Leave bank representative will call them. Okay, I think there was a lot of information. Let me try to summarize it. In addition to the areas for improvement, mobile banking in UAE has clear advantages that bring it to the level of global best practices. Firstly, the fact that banking in the UAE is now conducted mainly through mobile apps, and mobile banking is now the main channel for banking for private customers. Secondly, the ability to open accounts online without visiting a bank branch by sending an application to open an account through a mobile bank. Third, local transfers, which most expats mention as convenient due to their speed and simplicity. Fourth, many banks offer the ability to open an account with zero service fees and no requirements for the amount of account balances or card turnover. And this makes digital banking more accessible to all categories of expats in the country. And fifth, almost all new products for existing clients can be ordered and opened through mobile app also. It's very important. And the growth areas, as I have already said, include convenience of the process of opening the first account, general transparency of the bank for the client, international transfers, managing the security of your money through the mobile app, and customer support in the app. These are the areas in which it would be logical to expect the most active development of Emirates mobile banking in the next 2 or 3 years. And a few general forecasts that we made based on the current state of mobile banking in the country. The cases of the Leave app and VioBank tell us that the country is seeing a trend towards simplifying banking products and improving the usability of mobile banking apps. I assume that more and more market players will continue to invest in increasing user happiness by improving their digital customer experience. Second, simplifying the processes of opening accounts and receiving other banking products will increase competition for customer retention, and this, in turn, will increase the need to create a better customer experience as opposed to a price war. Yeah. And third, the experience of other countries shows us that when you improve the digital customer experience in banking, that creates a great demand for similar improvements in other financial products, like insurance products, like investment services and others. And at the same time, banks having a head start and already having more developed digital service channels will become a dominant market players in terms of selling insurance and investment products. So at this point, I would like to conclude the research part of our event. I hope that you were able to find useful knowledge for yourself and perhaps received interesting ideas for your digital products also. And now it makes sense to move on to a more interesting question, how you can get more benefits from the research results. Today, I have shared only a small part of the insights that we received during the research. There is even more information about the improvement opportunities for mobile banking, the problems that your customers have in mobile banking, the best practices that have already been implemented by your competitors or are just waiting to be implemented in the UAE market. We have collected all this in the full report of the research, and you can get access to it at the best price until the end of this year. The full report on the research results is a tool that will save hours of your researchers, product managers, and designers. And this report in this report, you will provide ideas and analytics for you on the state of the market throughout the whole next year. And it's important that the report will be useful not only for banks from the UAE, but also by banks from other countries in the MENA region. I'm sure that most of the insights we received will be relevant to banking services in other countries. And moreover, it will be useful not only by banks, but also by other digital businesses that compete with banks in the money transfer or lending or other markets. So the second product we offer is access to our global database of references and best practices for mobile banking. The database is a large data set of detailed descriptions of how certain user tasks are implemented in different mobile banks. Currently, the database covers 72 mobile banks from 16 countries. These are mainly European countries and the CIS region countries. This database is regularly updated with the new banks, and we monitor updates to the apps that are already in the database. In total, it now has more than 4,500 individual user scenarios, which are described in detail and with screenshots. Currently, the database is used by both our largest clients. One of them, for example, has about 100 users from different departments, and also by small teams, including fintech startups. For any team, the database is a tool for finding ready-made implementations of individual functions that can be quickly reused and implemented in your bank. Product owners, designers, and researchers working on new features reduce the discovery stage of feature development by 2-3 times, which with the help of this database. Important, until the end of this year, we are offering special conditions, and when you purchase a full report on the results of our study, you will receive free access to the database for 3 months. In 3 months, you can extract a lot of benefits for your teams, but most likely you will understand that you will need access to the database for a longer period. And in addition to the UAE mobile banking research report and the mobile banking best practices database, we offer several services that will be useful if you are developing mobile banking or similar digital services. The first is UX audit. This is a project to identify existing problems and barriers in your service that your users experience. We conduct UX testing. We conduct UX reviews with your researchers. We conduct in-depth interviews with your clients to identify and prioritize gaps between customer needs and the capabilities and qualities that your mobile bank currently has. And based on this, we build recommendations, select references, and best practices so that the implementation of recommendations is as fast as and convenient as possible for your team. The second service is a comparative study. Markswebb are specialists in benchmarking and comparative studies of digital financial services. We use the mystery shopper method to examine services, as well as our unique assessment checklists to evaluate and compare services. And as a result of such studies, you get a clear idea of the strengths and weaknesses of your mobile bank in relation to the mobile banks of competitors, and a set of recommendations on how to eliminate the gap with competitors and bring your mobile bank to a leading position. And the third service I want to offer you is searching for best practices and trends. We implement such projects for large banks normally in 2 cases. The first is when the bank's team develop a product strategy and they need to look at digital banking in a global context, what trends exist in it, how these trends affect end customers, their expectations and their perception, and how this can be used to develop the bank's business. And the second case is when the team is looking for ideas for new products and new features, and we give them raw material for generating ideas, finding new cool solutions for users' financial problems all over the world. I'm sure that such cases arise in your teams also, and such a service will also be useful to you. This is where I will conclude my speech. Thank you for your time and attention. It was very valuable for me to talk with you and share the results of our research project. And I will be very pleased to hear your feedback and possibly questions. Thank you again. I pass the speech to Yulia.
Thank you very much, Alexey. It was really interesting to me, our team, and for our guests, I believe. And I'd like to thank everyone for staying with us today. I hope our research results prove valuable to you. You can now see our contact and social media details, so please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or if you're interested in discussing a project. The research results will be published on our website today. You can access the report anytime, download the public version containing all the insights shared at today's presentation, or order the full report, which covers all our fundings in UAE mobile banking for expats. We'll send the link to all registered participants along with the recording of today's meetup a couple hours after the event. I also invite you to follow our LinkedIn page if you haven't already, as we'll be sharing more useful insights about mobile banking in the UAE over the coming weeks. Thank you once again, and I hope to get in touch soon.